Welcome dreamers, I'm Kira and this is Homestead Dreaming, and today I'm going to talk to you about how you can start your own urban homestead right where you are.
Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.
Now, this video is in collaboration with 3 other urban homesteading channels: Natalie from Hey It's a Good Life, Josh from The Citystead, and Victoria from Grow Your Groceries. This video, including all of theirs on this same subject, are linked down below in the collaboration playlist, as well as in the eye right up here. Don't forget to check out their videos after you check out mine.
Hear the crickets, see the moon, side by side and through. No limit to what we can do. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life.
So, starting an urban homestead is actually a lot easier than most people think it is. You gotta just decide what is most important to you. What is your why? What is motivating you to want to be an urban homesteader? Is it health related? Is it quality of food? Is it eventual financial freedom? Is it freedom from the rat race? Is it a combination of all of those things? For us, our why originated with health issues. I had some food health issues in my 20s, and I realized fairly quickly that healthy food is expensive, especially if you're trying to buy organically. So I decided that I wanted to learn how to grow it myself. So my first foray into urban homesteading was to learn how to garden and grow my own food. And then as the years progressed, we have expanded into backyard livestock to help supplement our meat and eggs. And I think it's important for us to know where our food comes from. And it's important for me to be able to feed myself and my kids and my family the best food that I can. The goal is to dramatically decrease our need for going and buying food from the grocery store. When you decide to start a garden, I would say the first thing you need to do is watch and learn. Watch and learn. And by that, I mean you need to watch the rain, watch the sun, and watch the wind of your entire property. So for me, it's my front yard, my backyard, my side yard. And also take that time while you're watching the sun, the wind, and the rain to do as much research as you possibly can on growing the food that you and your family eat the most. And what I mean by watching the rain, wind, and sun is you want to situate your garden in a spot that gets the most amount of sun, which would be south facing. But there are a few little caveats to that. What if you've got a big shade tree? What if you've got a building right next to you that blocks out your southern sun? So that's what I mean by watching the sun, is you want to see what part of your yard gets hit by the most amount of sun. So for me, it's my side yard and my front yard. I do have garden beds in the back, but they get significantly less sun than my front bed due to the fact that I have the detached garage casting shade as well as my very large oak tree. And in fact, my front yard could get more sun if that oak tree was trimmed up a little bit, but that's another story. Now, what I mean by watching the rain is you want to make sure that your garden is set up in an area that doesn't get too much or too little rain. For instance, if I were to put my grow bags any closer to the house than I currently have them, the rain would trench into them and ruin the seedlings and plants that are inside of those grow bags because I don't have gutters. Another thing to watch for is rain runoff. You don't want to set up a huge garden and spend the time in importing soil and planting seeds just for a large rainstorm to wash your soil and seeds into the street and have all of that be for nothing. If you live in an area that tends to have high winds, I live in Oklahoma. Today is rather calm for Oklahoma. It's still a little breezy, but not so bad. You want to maybe take into account that things that like to grow taller, like tomatoes, may get wind damaged if you live in an area that is a little too windy and you put your garden in a place that does not have very much shelter from the wind. My garden is in the front yard, so there's absolutely no wind block for them. So I have to be very vigilant in making sure that my taller plants are staked properly so that they don't break. And we had a tropical storm come through about two and a half weeks ago, and it made me realize that I had a few plants that weren't properly tied up to stakes. And I ended up losing some branches, and a few of my tomato plants even got topped right clean off. So those are some things that you may want to consider when starting your garden. The next thing to consider is, do you live in a homeowners association, or do you live in a town that has ordinances against certain things that you may want to look into? Do you live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association that would possibly object to having raised beds in the front yard? Do you live in a homeowners association or in a city that has a poultry ordinance that prevents you from getting chickens or quail or ducks? Those are things that are a great idea to research before you get into purchasing or building those things. I can say that there normally is a workaround to some of those things. For example, if you can't have raised beds in the front yard, then maybe you can put them in the backyard. Assuming that the sun, the wind, and the rain is right, you could put your beds in the backyard rather than the front yard. If you live in a homeowners association or in a city that has an ordinance against chickens, then maybe you could look into possibly getting quail. Quail are much smaller, much quieter, and are completely contained. They can be raised inside, outside, in a garage. As long as you've got them completely contained, no one will ever know that you've got quail. And they're a wonderful source for both meat and eggs. So now you gotta decide if you're going to buy or DIY. Now you gotta decide whether you're gonna buy or DIY. Are you gonna build those garden beds, or are you gonna buy some prefab ones? Are you going to build that chicken coop, or are you gonna buy one? That's your next step. Once you've done all your research, made sure that all of your ordinances are in order, you decide where is the best spot for your garden. You gotta decide if you're gonna spend the time and effort to build them yourself, or if you wanna spend the money to buy it pre-done. I will say that the majority of the time, it's more cost effective to build it yourself, especially considering most of the commercial chicken coops that you can buy are slightly too small for what they are actually advertised for. Please be a bee and not a wasp. So We built our raised beds in the front out of 2x4 studs. They were supposed to be 2 layers high, but due to the lockdown, it was slightly more difficult to get materials to do this. We really wanted to be able to get at least 30 beds in the front and get it started, so we decided to just do 1 layer high. I realized that technically raised beds are supposed to be 6 inches deep at the very least, but you gotta make do with what you got and make it work. That's part of being a homesteader, is making what you got work for what you need it to do. So honestly, if I could go back and change anything about my front beds, it would be that I would have them be 2 layers tall so that they would have a little bit more of a depth to them. And if I had more space, I would have spaced them out a little bit farther. Because I am in an urban setting, I needed to be able to squeeze as much as I could in my space. But honestly, it would be a lot easier maintenance-wise if I could fit my lawnmower between those beds, and I can't.
And you are almost on.
It's funny. Where's that chicken? Where did she go?
What's chicken, Mom?
Anna, she was just out here crying about not being able to get back over that way. She keeps getting out. I don't know where she went. I bet she's in the garage.
She lost. She lost, and then Mom.
So the next thing is you gotta learn how to preserve your harvests and eat seasonally. The more seasonally you eat, the less you have to buy at the grocery store. So if you train your mind and your body to eat seasonally, you're only eating, or you're eating the majority of your food out of what is growing and being harvested in your garden during that particular time of year, and also what you can produce on your homestead meat-wise. So for instance, when the ducks, chickens, quail are laying, in the spring, summer, and fall, we eat a lot of eggs. But in the winter, when they don't lay as much, we don't eat as many eggs. In the spring, when I have an abundance of peas, we eat peas and canned peas, assuming that we have enough peas to can. And then in the summertime, when we have beans, we eat those instead of the peas because that's what we've got. When you've got a kitchen table full of tomatoes, you don't want them all to go to waste. You want to learn how to be able to can those and preserve them for use for later. And that's also part of growing that amount of food in your garden, is being able to think ahead to be able to store the excess produce so that you have it all winter long when nothing is growing. Some great methods of preserving are water bath canning, pressure canning, dehydrating, freezing. You could put in the investment for a freeze dryer, though super pricey. The next thing that I really recommend when starting a homestead is seeking out your local community of homesteaders. There are so many YouTube channels, Facebook groups, Instagrammers, all sorts of great blogs, all sorts of great sources of information, community support, and just great all-around resources available just at your fingertips using your phone or your computer. I love you. Shut the door, baby. She went to go get chips. I have made so many great friendships just by meeting the people in my local homesteading communities. I have made so many lifelong friends by seeking out like-minded people, and it has made all the difference in the success of my journey. So I would highly recommend seeking out the support of your community, because seeking out the support of the community brings in outside knowledge that you would not normally have had. That chicken coop project that you're thinking of making, somebody else could have already tried that exact plan and could give you hints and tips on how to properly make it. That new variety of tomatoes that you're thinking of growing this year, maybe there's somebody on your local homestead group that has tried that variety before, and they can tell you whether or not it works in your growing zone. Tips and tricks on how to make it flourish, and maybe pros and cons to growing that particular variety. So that's how to start an urban homestead. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out Natalie's, Josh's, and Victoria's videos on this exact same subject so that you can get different perspectives. And I can't wait to see you guys again next week, where I talk about how much food I produce on my urban homestead.